Dustin Neeley, and I'm the lead pastor of Crossing Church in Louisville, Kentucky, and we are about 4 years in, and I was on staff at Sojourn and was a teaching pastor there, and through working under Daniel and being trained, along with what I learned at Southern Seminary, we have planted this work, and things are going well. I was sharing the gospel with my neighbors, just realized, look, I can take them 25 minutes away downtown to go to church at Sojourn, but it just wasn't really them, and so began to say, somebody ought to plant a church for these people in this area. And after a while, I realized that somebody was actually this body, and that that God was calling me. And I remember very clearly one Sunday morning, because at that time Sojourn was meeting at night, I looked out my window and I saw just an apartment complex full of cars. Nobody's going to church in this place where I was living. And was like, I've got to do this. I don't know how, but I have got to do this. And so kind of switched my degree track and then got real intentional. I had already gone on staff at Sojourn, but really moving in the direction of I really think that planting is going to be where I'm going to go. So for me, the need was the seed. And God really began to solidify that, and other people began to affirm that. The gospel started taking root with some of my neighbors, and started a community group in my house, and it kind of went from there. So for me, it really was just kind of this need and just this burning passion that led to the equipping and training and that kind of thing.
Can you tell more about how that was affirmed exactly?
I think people would follow me in group, and had a growing influence there among the Sojourn community, and had a number of opportunities to preach and teach there, and seeing people respond to that. And then just kind of the passion that I had to learn. Driscoll's books were real helpful, and had a real influential professor named Dr. J.D. Payne at the seminary that got behind me and said, I think you can do this. And so really both the internal call of my own soul from God, and then the external call from the church saying we believe in you, and then the educational and practical opportunities that opened up as well. Everything kind of converged to say, this is what you need to do. I think for everybody it's going to look a little bit different depending upon their marriage and their children, and whether or not they have kids. But I think that is an undervalued but increasingly important thing that must be kept at the forefront of any planting process, because whatever is in your marriage and whatever is in your parenting before you plant will come out when the stress of the plant comes on. And so that was something that I made a lot of mistakes in the early days of working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and my wife resents the plant, and we've got to pull it together. We've got that kind of. We went through some hard seasons very early on, and then when you have children, it just kind of ups the ante, because there's more people looking at you for leadership, and a lot of what I've learned the hard way. And for me, it was even more acute, and I don't necessarily recommend this to other people, but I was in seminary. We already had one child, and we had 3 of our other 4 children while we were planting, and it was a really tumultuous season. So some of that is part and parcel of it. Just is what it is. However, I think you've got to hear what the scriptures say, that if you don't pastor your family, then you are not fit to pastor God's church. I mean, the scriptures are clear about that in the elder qualifications in Timothy and Titus as well. And so I think you've got to see it, first and foremost, as biblical mandate, that if you don't do anything else, you've got to pastor that little flock at your house. So for me, the way that it kind of shakes out is just hearing that call and hearing it on a regular basis. And when we do, and this is what I teach our people to do, every night we do something called Bible time. And basically we just sit down around the table, and I've got little kids too, so this makes it fun and interesting. I have a 6, a 4, a 3, and a 10-month, and we sit around and we'll read some story Bible stuff, and then we'll do some catechism questions, and some scripture memory, and I play guitar, and so sometimes we'll sing as a family, and we'll all pray for each other's boo-boos, and for somebody in the neighborhood that doesn't know Jesus or whatever. And so it's really like a really good, healthy discipline for our family. And in fact, now My 6-year-old cried yesterday when I got on the plane because we weren't going to have Bible time because I wasn't going to be there to tell superhero stories. So if we miss now, like, they will come to me and say, you know, Dad, we have got to do this. And so just making that priority, just like you would prioritize your own devotional time with the Lord of, you know, we really want to do this as a family. Some people do it. I try to do it every day. Other people are 3-4 times a week. I mean, you don't need to be a legalist about it. But the priority of this is who we are as a family, you know, upon, you know, standing under that biblical qualification, I think that's a good practical way that you can do it. And what I always tell guys is just to start simple. Don't try to make it, you know, a big Piper exposition on something. I mean, just keep it simple and make it fun, and just involve your kids in it as much as you can. For me, listening to my wife was the barometer. That, I mean, because she knew she knew what she was getting into, and I did too. But knowing it and experiencing it are obviously two different things. But being able to really listen to her, and don't just like listen at her, but listen to what she's actually saying and the look on her face, and almost kind of learning how to read your spouse and your family of, you know, what is really the spiritual temperature in our home. And then, you know, in some seasons just recognizing, you know, like we can't do this. Like, I know that this needs to be done, and but this weekend we got to get out of town. You know, and we've dropped the kids here, and we're going to do this. And so I think the first thing for me is kind of listening to my wife and really assessing not what I think the situation ought to be, but what the situation actually is in my home. And I think, you know, if I would also tie this to kind of your devotional and spiritual life as well, that if you're really walking with Jesus, that He's going to give you the spiritual wisdom that you need to be able to rightly assess that situation and hear when, you know, the bat phone is ringing, if you will, in your wife's life, to be able to respond to that situation. So I think it's those two things: listening to your wife and listening to God.